Some people relate the word chaplaincy with religion. And sometimes that's a problem because people may believe that the chaplain wants to talk just about religion, and it's not. The chaplain is more focused on the spiritual part of the person, which means is what about your values, your beliefs, more than the mind, your spirit. There is need for having spiritual conversations, emotional conversations. That's why it's important.
Through tough times, we often look after our bodies and minds. But for many who are facing life's challenges, whether it is the illnesses, battles, pressures of outcomes, or stresses of duty, healing happens with support that goes beyond mind and body. They need spiritual support. The people who provide the support and guidance are chaplains. The spiritual supporters who go beyond religious boundaries, providing comfort and healing for those who seek. My guest today is Nicolas C.Pacheco, a corporate chaplain and a long-term pastor who provides spiritual support for those in a corporate environment. In this episode, we will learn the nuances of chaplain service, who can become one, and what it takes to be a spiritual guide for those in need. This is Career Calling, and I'm your host, Pratibha Pandit. Hi, Nicolas. Welcome to Career Calling.
Hi, Pratibha. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
This is one of the episodes where I'm entering into an arena that I haven't any experience or I haven't known before. So I'm really very curious to learn about your field today, corporate chaplain. So let me start by asking you to give me a quick overview of what does it mean to be a corporate chaplain? What is the role and what are your responsibilities?
The role is to provide care, support to the employees of the company. I think after COVID-19, a couple of years ago, many people in the work environment start to feel some kind of pressure from the family, emotional situations that they were living at home, and they brought all of these feelings, emotions at work, and it's starting to affect the work performance. So many companies were willing to provide that kind of support at work, the chaplaincy, to provide a chaplain who can talk to people about emotional or spiritual issues.
Chaplaincy has a lot history of its own, right? Before it became like corporate chaplaincy. Can you tell a little bit about the origins of this role?
Yes, it goes back to 1775 when the Continental Congress authorized a person who could be in the army speaking with these soldiers on about spiritual issues. And you know what? They got the same pay as a captain. They got the same amount of payment. So it was one person who could provide emotional and spiritual support right there in the field. So it goes back to 1775 in the United
So military
States.
is the origins of it.
That's the origins, but it goes way back to the biblical principles that when San Martin, who was a soldier, he saw a homeless and he cut his cape and he gave it half of it to this homeless. So that's why the cape, the Latin capellany, this is the origin of the word. It's like supporting somebody, helping somebody, taking care of somebody. That's why everything started with the army. Yeah.
Interesting. And in today's modern world, what are the different work settings where chaplains are working?
I have a friend who is a chaplain with the Nationals, the baseball team in Washington, D.C. He is the chaplain with the team. I have another friend who is chaplain with the sheriff's department in Texas. So there is many areas like they can work at universities, hospitals, corporations, with professional teams, with public safety. as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm. One thing that I wanted to understand is there is a lot of talk about therapy and psychological counseling that is taken prominence. I wanted to understand how is it different from somebody who is just providing that type of a counseling service versus chaplaincy.
Yes, psychologists and therapists, they are more focused on the mind,
Mhm.
the behavior, and the how you can change your way of thinking. So the chaplain is more focused on the spiritual part of the person, which means is what about your values, your beliefs,
Mhm.
more than the mind, your spirit.
Mhm.
That's the difference. Yes.
Mhm. When it comes to religious or spiritual support, we think of religious organizations. So, also, if you could tell me the difference between, let's say, a pastor and a chaplain, what is the difference?
The pastor is focused on is the name pastoral care, which means he goes with the people, can go even with the family, kids, even the background. Everything has to do with the pastor because the pastor is the person who's gonna support not only for just a couple of sessions, but becomes a friend that goes along with the person. And in the chaplaincy is by permission,
Mhm.
is voluntary. If the person wants to talk with the chaplain just for one time, that's gonna be it. There is no compromise with continuing the conversations or giving a good testimony. Nothing like that. It's just I want to talk to you. I have this situation in emotionally. I have issues with my family. I want to talk to you. Can we have a session? Yes, and we listen. If they
Mhm.
don't want to talk again next week, we cannot force them because it's voluntary. Now the pastor is different because the pastor knows the people at church for a long time, maybe, and they're gonna continue talking for on weekly basis, for instance, and that's different. The pastoral care and with the chaplaincy care.
Mhm. Is the chaplaincy associated with specific religions? And how
No,
do you work when you're working in a corporate setup? How do you work with people from different religious backgrounds?
yes, that's a good question because some people relate the word chaplaincy with religion, and sometimes that's a problem because people may believe that the chaplain wants to talk just about religion, and it's not. The chaplain is the person who can provide non denominational support, or even the person, if he doesn't believe in God, still the chaplain need to have the ability to have a conversation with the permission of the person if he wants to talk or not about God. Yes, it's a person who provides care, who provides support, but nothing to do with religion, unless the person wants to talk about it. But that's why it's confidential, by permission, and voluntary.
Do you commonly work with in corporations? Do you work with different religions, people with
Yes,
different religious backgrounds?
yes, actually, it was one of the reasons this company found me because my background is in the corporate environment. I work for 13 years as a corporate trainer, and then I am a church pastor. I have the ministry experience and the corporate experience. So I have the opportunity to have spiritual conversations with people from different backgrounds. And behind a question, there is always a person who, no matter what the beliefs are, there is a person who probably is suffering or probably he doesn't have the right answer. So he's looking for support independently for the beliefs that they have. So the corporate experience as a trainer gave me the opportunity to be able to listen people from different backgrounds.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, that's a good segue for my next question, which is what it takes to become one. You said you were a corporate trainer and then also a church pastor. What it takes. Are there any education qualifications? Are there licensures required to become a chaplain?
Yes, if somebody is interested in the chaplaincy arena, if they check, for example, Kaiser, if they see the requirements, they require, yes, a theological background. They don't have to be a pastor, but the theological studies, masters is the minimum requirement. And also CPE units, which means pastoral care education. That's the most important part. But the person, if you ask me who could be interested in this, is a person who is looking for serving others.
Mhm.
I think that's the main ingredient. Of course, yes, you need to have your studies, you need to have the units. But if you don't really want to serve others, this is not for you, because this is just for serving others. A chaplain doesn't have a regular schedule. Usually, a chaplain can receive a phone call anytime,
Oh, interesting.
24/7. Oh, yes, because the person trusts in him during crisis time.
Hmm.
If the person goes to the hospital and they know that they have a chaplain, they're going to call. I receive phone calls all the time, not only from work, but for sometimes they are driving and they just make a stop and chaplain, can we talk? Sure. Yeah.
Um,
So it's not an office schedule. It's basically 24/7. So if
mhm.
the person wants to serve others, this is the right place to be. Like the example that I gave it to you with San Martin, when he saw the homeless and he cut his cape and he gave it to him. That's what is a perfect example what a chaplain is, serving others.
Mhm.
Let me tell you something. I was in Sacramento yesterday and somebody came to me and he said, I know what a chaplain is. I said, tell me. And he said, in my church, he said, the chaplain is the person who is taking care of others. So if somebody is not doing his job, he come and say, hey, you need to do this better. So everybody can be failing, but the chaplain never fails, he says, because he's always aware.
Mhm.
I said, that's very interesting. I didn't
Yeah.
think about it, but it's very interesting. Yeah, because if somebody calls me now, I need to be in the position to answer well. I cannot say
Mhm.
that I'm not for him, for her. I need to be present because I need to be able to listen why he or she called me.
Mhm. Mhm. Very interesting. Is there any licensure? For example, to become a therapist, one needs to have a license. Is there anything like that?
You need to be registered in the associations of chaplaincy, and that has a requirements. You need to be trained, and you need to be licensed by the organization of chaplaincy. So
Mhm.
there are one main organization nationwide that requires those CPU units,
Mhm.
and then you need to have the training, CPE units, and you need to be authorized by them. Yes, it goes directly to this organization, and they can, if you check the website, you can see all the requirements to be approved to work,
Mhm.
for example, in a hospital.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your journey. How did you decide to be a chaplain, and what was your journey like? Was it something that you had thought about when you were a kid in high school or something like that? Can you tell a little bit about your journey?
Sure, yeah. I'm a seminary student. Even today, I'm still working on my doctorate now. Doctorate ministry is where I'm working now. But
Mhm.
something that I noticed when speaking at, at the corporation that I used to work is that people are looking for spiritual support, but they may don't want to go, they don't want to go to church specifically. They are looking for somebody to whom they can talk and they can trust. And this is a good opportunity to go out
Mhm.
to do the rounds, to do the visit at the offices, at the
Mhm.
corporations, and you can talk to them right there. They don't have to come on Sunday to church. They are right there. And sometimes, hey, chaplain, that's good that I see you. Can I talk to you? I said, sure. So it's a Tuesday, 2 p.m. It's perfect. I love it. I love my job. It's not a job, it's a ministry. I don't
Mhm.
call it job.
Mhm.
I call it
Yeah.
ministry.
Yeah. That was going to be my next question. Is there something like a career path for this? Or it is a more of a service that is a chaplain is a chaplain?
I have friends who have the theological studies, but they are not pastors. What happens is they work, for example, in hospitals or in home care facilities. So it's a good place, like a nurses. Sometimes they have the ability to talk to others and they can be chaplain
Mhm.
because they have the knowledge, the experience, and the service mind. It's not a specific career path that you have to do this 3 years and then 2 more years of this. No, it goes different. It goes for each person.
Mhm. Mhm. Since you've also been through the theological studies side, I would like to touch a little bit upon that. Can you tell how that path works? Is there an undergrad and a grad degree? Can you tell a little bit about that path as well?
Sure, yes. Mm, I have two diplomas from it's Gateway Seminary, which is the theological studies and the church planting churches studies. And then I took my master's in Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, Texas. And then the biblical counseling diploma over there as well. And, and now I'm still studying my doctor's degree right there. So it has been a long journey.
Mhm.
I don't know how many years, but
Mhm.
yeah, for sure more than 12 years.
Mhm. Is it typical for chaplains to go through this type of education, or it's not necessary?
I have friends who took the master's in theological without having the bachelor's in the seminary. Probably they had another career path, but then they decided to take theological studies as a master degree, and then they decided to be a chaplain.
In other career paths, professions, you have you go to college and you do internships, you apply for a job, and then you get into that profession. How does it work for you? And what is the path? Like, how do you become a chaplain, whether it's a hospital or somewhere? What does the path look like?
In the organization that I work for, they require years of ministry as a pastor. I qualified by my 12 years as a pastor. So, yes, they need to see some credibility that you have been serving in this capacity for years. That is not just a desire, that you can prove your ministry for serving others. Because this is, it may look easy, but it's not at all. It's not. It requires patience, the ability to listen others, the ability to put aside your own beliefs and just focus on what the person is talking about.
Mhm.
So yeah, years in the ministry is a good ingredient, actually a requirement, plus the theological studies, and then of course the desire to serve others.
So I was doing a little research online about different questions related to it, and I came across this. I thought it would be interesting to ask you and get your opinion. Can an atheist become a chaplain?
Remember, this is a spiritual support. This is not the mind support.
Mhm.
So the spiritual part, in some degree, has to do, even if you don't believe in what God. Okay, so what is God? What is what you don't believe?
Mhm.
So at least that question comes around, and that's why it's important to have the studies.
Mhm.
Because yes, of course, somebody without that belief that is can come to talk with the chaplain, but it's not the only one. So he needs to have the studies. If he doesn't have, the chaplain doesn't have the studies, how he gonna be able to respond others who believe?
Yeah,
Yes,
makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. Can you tell me, in your view, who are the right people? You touched upon it earlier. Who should be considering becoming chaplain and why?
you know what? When I go to the annual meetings that we have from all over the country, I can see why they are chaplains because I can see how they love others, how they love to spend time listening, to others, providing the support that probably nobody can provide just because the chaplain creates an unique relationship with the person. I was visiting this place yesterday and I spoke with one of the managers, and he said, Chaplain, I don't know. This is a hard environment. I don't know if they're going to be able to talk to you soon. You need to take some time to create relationship. I say, yeah, for sure. Yeah, because this is a place where everybody's tough. Sure. Yeah, you understand. And you know what? At the end, I was talking with him like an hour and a half, and he didn't realize that he was a person who didn't believe that it could happen. And 1 hour and a half later, I say, do you realize how long we have been talking? He said, you know what? No.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it happens. So when you're a chaplain, is you care about others. You are able to listen. Probably at the beginning, you can face rejection because maybe they don't want to talk to me, but it's okay. But if
Mhm.
I can start a conversation about showing that it's not about me, that it's about them, yeah, at the end, I can create a good conversations.
Mhm.
Yeah. So who can be a chaplain? A person who cares for others. Yes,
Mhm.
I could say that.
Mhm. And you mentioned that master's is the minimum requirement,
Yes.
master's in theology. What would be, in your opinion, the right age to think about this area?
You know what? I have seen people who are already in retirement,
Mhm.
and I have seen young people that same thing, who they want to serve others. I have friends who like to serve in the terminal part of the life of the people. So they like to speak with people who are, the doctor say, you know what, he has just 3 more months. They love to talk to them. Or young people who wants to talk with youth who are looking for some guide in their lives. Yeah. And oh, the people who were veterans who were in the military, he said, you know what? I love to talk with the veterans. So it's my passion to talk to them in the veterans organizations, in the veterans um, parades, in the veterans hospitals, different areas where you can work. So I see people, young people, I see people in retirement already, I see in the military, and because they love their people, they love a specific group.
Mhm. When you're getting certified for chaplaincy, do you have to specialize in these type of areas like you mentioned about somebody who is terminally ill? Is there anything like you specialize in talking to terminally ill or talking to veterans? Is there anything like that, or it is just where you end up working?
There is an organization, Vitas. That organization is focused just on terminally ill people. So if somebody's interested in that area, of course, it's a good organization to ask for the requirements, and probably they train you. So that's Vitas. If you are not really, you don't want to be in the hospitals or with people in the last 3 months of their life, probably that's not the company that you want to work. Probably you're going to be more focused on the hospitals. Or what about organizations? What about universities? What about, there are too many, but it depends. What's the environment that you feel comfortable? Like
Mhm.
myself, I feel very comfortable working in the corporate environment, speaking with CEOs, speaking with people at the offices, speaking with people in the field. Yes, that's me. But like my friend, he loves to talk with people in the sports industry. So I don't even know how he does that, but he loves to do that. So he
Mhm.
applies with the teams, the schools, universities,
Mhm.
colleges.
So it's
It depends.
basically where you find the need for a chaplain, you go in there and then you develop that expertise.
Yes, I met a person who loves to talk with kids. She specializes in the kids' education. Yeah, it depends
Okay.
where you want to work. Yes.
Mhm. Another interesting thing that I know, you shared your experience about a company where you were told that it's a difficult environment. I was curious, especially in the West Coast or in a lot of the technology companies, let's say, typically, at least from what I have seen, they want to stay away from anything, any religious inclinations. Are there any certain type of organizations or corporations where these roles are more available or more welcomed than the other? Or, in other words, are there a certain type of companies that tend to hire?
For example, Chick-fil-A, In and Out, those organizations are very open to have chaplains. Coca-Cola, Nestle, those companies, and some others, they don't want to like to talk about that word,
Mm.
chaplain, religion, God. So they don't want to talk, they don't want to know anything about it. But a lot has to do with the CEOs. A
Okay.
lot has to do with the owners of the company. Because if they believe that it is important to have somebody at the organization, they're going to hire anyway. And whoever wants to talk is available.
Mm.
If the person believes it's important, they're going to be in contact with the chaplain to provide and to have the opportunity to provide the services for their employees. It depends on the top leadership.
Mhm.
It depends. But speaking about geographically, the East Coast is more open to chaplaincy. They call it the Christian Belt that goes from Texas, Florida, Georgia, all the way, I don't know, Tennessee, Alabama, all the way, which is different than the East Coast when you go from Seattle, Oregon, Los Angeles. Is
West
different.
Coast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the West Coast. Yeah, it's different than the East Coast. And but still there is need for having spiritual conversations, emotional conversations. That's why it's important to have the ability to get the permission to
Mhm.
speak about God or not. If they don't want to talk about God, yeah, don't worry. We're going to talk about just the emotional part of your situation or the spiritual part. But sure, it's by
Mm.
permission. If
Okay.
they don't give the permission, that's fine.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm. And typically in your work setting, do you go into the office? Are you based in an office or you are more, it's like a field job where you could go
It's
into
like a
any.
field job in my case, a
Mhm.
field job. Yes. Other friends that I know, yeah, they have their office and people come to see him. In my case, I got to see them
Mhm.
instead of they come to see me. They can reach me out by phone, but my job is to go and see them, visiting them, instead of having an office and waiting for visitors. No, I go and I do my rounds. I visit them at their workplace.
Okay. Finally, question, if anybody who is watching this or otherwise who are interested, who find this job to be cut out for them, like they really like this concept of serving others outside of the religious organizations to people who are suffering or people who need that support. What are some of the resources available and how would you guide them to get into this field?
I would check like Corporate Chaplains of America. That's one resources, and they can see what it is, the requirements. And also there is another one with Kaiser Careers. If they type the word chaplaincy, they there is a list of information about the requirement, what the chaplain does, what they expect for chaplains. Another one is Vitas. That's more focused on the terminally ill patients. So that's a different one. The sheriff's department, they are looking for all the time. They are looking for all the time. And believe it or not, Latifah, there is a lot of need for chaplains. A lot. There is, you have no idea how, especially in the West Coast, there is a lack of applicants for chaplaincy. Yeah.
Now, regarding certification, is there any resource available on how to prepare for the certification? Is there anything that you
Some
can?
organizations, they give you the time to do it.
Mhm.
Like, for instance, if you have the unit, but you don't have the certification, they say, are you able to have the certification in the next 6 months? Then we can start. And they, sure, yes, let's. And they enroll you and they provide sometimes they themselves, they provide the training, or they send you to take the certification.
This is really fascinating. I've really learned something new today, and I'm really glad that you were able to come on my podcast and share this information. I'm sure a lot of people will find this very valuable. Thank you so much, Nicholas.
Thank you, Pratifka. It was my pleasure. Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Career Calling, and I'm your host, Pratibha Pandit. For more contents like this, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a rating, or a comment. Thank you for tuning in.